Good afternoon and welcome to our April CHI webinar. I'm Laura Aaron with Social Policy Research Associates, and I'm pleased to virtually see all of you this afternoon for our second in our new series called Insights from the Innovators. Today we'll be hearing from San Joaquin Delta College, a first-round CHI grantee who has paved the way for additional innovators like you on this webinar. Their innovative registered nursing apprenticeship program is for incumbent licensed vocational nurses, or LVNs, who work for the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Their program expands the career paths for LVNs. Lisa Lucchesi, the Director of Health Sciences, will tell us about the program and the lessons they learned along the way. Also on the line and available for questions are Salvador Vargas, Dean of Career Technical Education and Workforce Development, Julie Kay, the Dean of Health Sciences, and the Apprenticeship Programs Manager, Sherry Peterson. We encourage you to use the chat feature to send in your questions throughout the presentation. Next slide. And Delta College's good work has opened doors for 2 additional CHI grantees to start their own LVN to RN apprenticeship programs, Sacramento City College and the Riverside Community College District. So the seeds are being planted throughout the state. And now, without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Lisa Lucchesi. Next slide.
Thank you, Laura. We are very excited to share with you today the knowledge and experiences that went into creating this successful apprenticeship model. As many of you may be aware, that it all began with the Community College Chancellor's Office made the grant funding available from Proposition 98 for the CHI program, which was designed to create new and innovative programs. So the CHI was seeking those really new creative ways to partnership for creating training that didn't previously exist. And therefore, nursing was a unique opportunity to utilize the apprenticeship model. So together with the California Correctional Healthcare System, known as CCHCS, in conjunction with the Service Employees International Union, SEIU, Local 1000, they developed the proposal as a way for the licensed vocational nurse, or LVN, who works within the correctional health care system, as a way for them to advance to registered nurse positions. And that serves kind of 2 roles in promoting and advancing their education and their experience, but it was also seen as a way of fulfilling the RN staffing gap within the correctional system. So San Joaquin Delta College Administration worked very closely with CCHCS, SEIU, and the Department of Apprenticeship Standards to create this unique partnership. The process included the development of the Joint Apprenticeship Training Committee, which meant monthly to ensure that apprentice students were adequately prepared to enter the program and follow them, tracking them as employees and students so that they are fully successful in completing the Associate Degree Nursing program at Delta College. Slide 2, please. So some of the unique items in this grant included the selection process. So CCHCS worked with SEIU to determine the eligibility of an employee, so meeting the eligibility standards that they developed based upon their employment status. And then the transcripts were evaluated for readiness to admit to our program. And then the final approval came to the committee, where the decision to indenture them into this apprenticeship model was made by the committee. So an important piece of the successful implementation of this program also included the BRN. So the ADN program worked with the BRN to meet the requirements to add the additional students and receive complete approval from the BRN. The apprenticeship students must meet all the requirements of any upgrade student that would apply to our program traditionally. Usually apprenticeship training, as we all know, is on-the-job training, but in this scenario, the LVNs job sites, which were the Correctional Healthcare System, primarily 3 sites that were used at the beginning of this grant process. They were not in keeping with the parameters established by the BRN to meet the same requirements as our other clinical facilities. So because of that, the job sites would not be considered acute care settings, and therefore apprenticeship students were required to fulfill their clinical requirements at our existing BRN-approved clinical sites. So the original intent of being able to be a directly job-placed site did not meet the same BRN requirements. So the SEIE Local 1000 also had in place their existing language that was agreed upon by labor and management regarding the apprenticeship training and pay. So the language existed that referred to the apprentice working 20 hours per week and attending clinical or school or the combination of for 20 hours per week and receiving full-time pay and benefits. This allowed them, the flexibility to be available for class and clinical that other students were attending as well. The funding also allowed for additional success personnel, which included Sherry Peterson at our facility and Sarah McGinn, who worked for SEIU. So together they were able to offer additional support to the students, whether it was academic, personal counseling, or sometimes even work-related issues. The SEIU staff supported them throughout that process. Next slide, please. So where are we now? So the Joint Apprenticeship Committee was able to indenture a total of 44 students. Of those 44 students, 36 were admitted to the associate degree program. To date, 20 of them have graduated from our program. And within that population of 44, 16 students didn't complete or weren't even admitted to the program for various reasons. We did have 5 students that dropped from the apprenticeship on their own. Some of them experienced personal hardships, health issues, family stresses that didn't allow them to be fully committed to the rigor of a nursing program. 3 students were dismissed related to work issues, and I think that would probably be one of the definite takeaway messages that none of us anticipated was what negative impact maybe some of their stress and things played on them being able to fulfill their work-related issues or duties. 3 students did not meet the academic requirements of our ADN program, meaning by definition of our program, if students fail 2 of our nursing programs, they are unable to continue. And then 5 students weren't academically ready to enter our program, and those were for various reasons. They may not have been successful in some of their prerequisites, and then we have at least 2 students who were unable to meet the minimum requirement for the TEAS entrance exam. Currently, in our program, we have 8 students, 2 who started in the 3rd semester as of January, and 6 students who are prepared to graduate December 2019. So, I'm sorry, I think I said the 2 started in January. Those 2 are in 4th semester and they'll graduate in May. So, and then we'll have 6 completing in December. So, next slide. This slide is something that all nursing programs would take to heart in our evaluation of our programs. We're held to standards based upon the BRN, and if you have accreditations, you're also held to standards which include the pass rate of your students. So the first line indicates that San Joaquin Delta College's past 5 years of pass rates. As you can see, it's fluctuated from 85 to the highest being 93%. The 27-18 pass rate of 91.4% includes the apprentice students that have graduated through the period of time. What we looked at, in addition to that information, is how did the students perform on their own. So just based upon the 20 students that have taken the NCLEX, the separate pass rate for the students of the apprenticeship program is 75%. We work very closely with the students graduating, whether they're apprentice or not, to help them be successful, offering them an opportunity to participate in an NCLEX review course. And we also offer an opportunity for them to have one of the latest, greatest apps that's out there that offers an app with continuous questioning. And the students really favor that application in passing. So we still work with them closely if they're not successful to pass, offering the opportunity to come back and retake the NCLEX prep course. And some of those students, the 25% that did not pass, have since gone on to be successful. Next slide, please. So when we look at the total program and what did we spend the money on, we looked at it as a great opportunity to offer these students support. We were able to purchase textbooks that included both prerequisites and all of the textbooks required in our program. The students' funding also covered their background check, uniform, badges, patches, and any computer access or liability insurance that might be required in the program. The funding also supported faculty, whether it was prerequisite or some of the in-course program courses or faculty. And then, as I mentioned earlier, probably some of the biggest success, or one of the tools that we thought helped the students be very successful, were the support staff. And so that included at the beginning additional tutors, and then, of course, our success coordinators. And a portion of the money went directly to the facilities to help backfill as the 2020 participants weren't able to fulfill their full-time requirements. Some of that money was given to the facilities directly to cover some of the costs. Next slide, please. So lesson learned is the biggest thing that we would like people to take away today, so that others can be a successful program as well, is as we entered this, we knew we needed to evaluate the transcripts, and we probably could have done that earlier to ensure that students didn't have more prerequisites needed to start the program. So doing that early and ensuring that the students have given you accurate transcript information is really important. Supporting students to pass the TEAS test, so that can also be done through study groups, through the ATI's product online, and then looking at ways to support students to be successful on the TEAS. Always intervening early with a counselor on campus, because students may have been out of the academic arena for a period of time, and they may believe that they're ready for our program or ready for graduation once they enter. It's important to involve a campus counselor early so that they're able to be adequately prepared for graduation. And then, of course, I think, as I mentioned, one of the things that maybe the employer side, and it's a lesson learned for us as well, is that it's a partnership in their work needs, and they need to fulfill those, and any support that we can give them as a program, or any support staff to help them be successful on the job as well. And I think that was, as mentioned, it's a takeaway for CCHCS to put in place adequate policies that hold the nurses accountable for their employment status as well. So it's very doable. It's great to be at this point and to be able to share opportunities to do it in the future. So next slide. I think that's it.
Yeah, and I think let's go back to the previous slides so we can just keep those up during kind of the Q&A piece. And Lisa, a question has come in from Sahai Kafari, and she thanks you. It's been very informative. And she wondered, at what point in the process were the transcripts evaluated? Or when maybe you...
When we would recommend.
Yes, I think recommend.
Jerry might be able to speak to this if I'm not answering it correctly, but we would recommend that the transcripts be evaluated prior to being indentured, because once you've indentured the student, then you're committing to the completion of this program. So doing that early.
Doing that early. And because your experience, you hadn't done it before they were indentured, and then...
That was our very first group of students or cohort that was admitted. And being that we were all new to the process,
yes.
We moved forward, or the committee moved forward to indenture students. And at that time, when we had some of the information, we found that some of it wasn't accurate, and that some of the courses that students previously thought they took met our requirements did not. It could be based upon the institution they took it at, just the content wasn't an equivalent course. So it was that first cohort of students that we experienced that bump in the road, probably.
And so do you feel like then it might have set up a couple of apprentices to not necessarily succeed because they had maybe too far to go, or they weren't prepared? It was that kind of thing, or?
Well, we were able to complete the people. I mean, as we mentioned in that previous slide, there were multiple reasons why people didn't, and some of them truly, were unable to complete the requirements at the academic level that was needed. But we worked very diligently to stay with that first cohort to allow them to complete.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And someone has asked, for the folks that maybe had life circumstances, bubble up, did any of those folks come back to the program?
We had several students that, well, I would say we probably had the 3 that failed academically. They were offered academic support. Some of the personal support came from the SEIU Success Coordinator and their staff. I'm trying to think if we had, I think probably the greater amount of those people that had those struggles probably actually ended up exiting and that's typical of a nursing student, very, very typical. It seems as though sometimes it's not the program side, it's the life side that becomes too challenging. So it's not an unusual event for people to leave for personal reasons. They've all been given opportunities to readmit, based upon our policies, except for the academic failure. So,
of course.
And
so Hi is another question, and maybe you can also say what the NCLEX is, because we're putting around a lot of acronyms, but she was wondering, was NCLEX review required or optional? And she has for the first round students, but I mean for all your students.
Well, it is an optional event. It's a grant-funded in-person NCLEX review course provided by Kaplan, is the company that we use. But we always strongly encouraged them, and we encouraged these students and worked together with CCHCS to ensure that they could have the time off to be here. And it's, it's a great opportunity. And then we have reached out to the students that weren't successful in passing the NCLEX on the first attempt, and they were allowed to reattend the course in person. We see the value of in-person reviewing.
You also mentioned, I think you said something like the latest, greatest app that also helps apprentices study for the exam. And could you tell us more about that? Like, what kind of things did it provide the student? Was it specifically for this exam, or was it for any kind of exam?
The latest, greatest app is called UWorld. And it's one that the students happen to rate extremely high. It's an app, so you have it with you on your phone at all times. So they like the flexibility of being able to complete questions whenever they're ready, so that they can, if they're sitting at a baseball game or on a break at lunch, they're able to complete questions to continue to practice NCLEX style questions. And we've also heard a lot of positive feedback from the students in that they have good rationales for the questions. So it allows students to learn from their mistakes, in a safe environment on an app. So it's been, and some students state that they prefer that over the in-person review class. But.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering, you mentioned that some of the grant money went to backfill slots. And
Mm-hmm.
as we know here, 20-hour, everyone was an incumbent worker, so it's different than some of the other programs that we have for CHI, right? So everyone already had a job. And
Mm-hmm.
can you tell me a little bit more about how the correction system did cover those shifts, because it was 20 hours a week while the apprentices were in school or in clinic?
I can only speak to it from what we've heard. Obviously, it would be a more direct answer from CCHCS because they dealt with the constant staffing. But, they would fill those positions, what would have been their regularly scheduled times. They worked diligently with them to try to give them opportunities to maybe pick up a 4-hour shift or something that worked for each apprentice. But the money that was given was probably, I would probably say, and I'm not a CCH employee, a drop in the bucket in terms of the cost coverage. So really it's I would say it's just a nice incentive for them to continue to support this great program. So
they had to basically say, we're going to get by with either temporary staff or give other full-time staff members additional hours. Correct. Because we're looking at the long term and we're saying we're going to have more RNs.
Correct.
Got it.
Very supportive environment.
Terrific. Let's see, we've got another great question here. What would you recommend to ensure good communication among partners on the Joint Apprenticeship Training Council? Was meeting monthly enough to facilitate strong communication?
I believe that meeting monthly was a good method of communication. There was also a lot of email communication. They needed, especially from the employer standpoint, it was our responsibility to kind of notify them as things occurred or changed or scheduled changes, because it meant a change to the employee's work schedule. I think meeting monthly was adequate. I think we saw a lot of value in being face-to-face at the table and understanding that we're all there to support this student to be successful. I see the value in a person-to-person meeting. So,
yeah, great. And so I was wondering what you saw from maybe the LVN's kind of viewpoint, how this apprenticeship incentivize them to continue to work for the correction system?
That might be a question answered better by Sherry Peterson or or somebody else on the panel.
Yeah, let's do that.
I think it's an employee.
Let's unmute.
She probably met with the students face-to-face on a more regular basis. So.
Yeah, Sherry's line is now unmuted. So, Sherry, again, that question was, how did this apprenticeship incentivize LVNs to continue to work for the correction system?
The students were allowed to,
Sherry, can you talk? We can't hear you. Can you talk into the phone?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
A little better. Can you talk into the phone?
Okay. The students were given a presentation by the prison system that showed them how it was to their benefit to stay with the system. In terms of salary and benefits, especially if they're vetted any number of years towards their retirement.
Got it. And so do you think that that is something, this is always, a question is employers want to know, will folks stay with us, right, after we give them this great opportunity? And what do you think people's reactions were to, it looks like their salary would, certainly increase, et cetera?
Well, we've only had a handful of the apprentices leave state service. So most of them have opted to stay with state service, and, because they realize that, if they have 10 plus years with the state, that's towards their retirement. And then as an RN, they would retire with a higher salary from the state. So the state has worked really hard to keep these nurses working for them.
Right. That's great. And what were the reactions? You said 20, have graduated from the program, they're RNs, and what have been the reactions of apprentices who have graduated from the program?
They have all been extremely grateful for this opportunity to go through the nursing program, graduate, and take the NCLEX and be successful, because they, that for many LVNs, that is an end game. They want to become RNs, and they realize how difficult it is to get into an RN program, even for an LVN.
Right.
So for this opportunity to be able to work 20 hours a week and still receive full-time salary and benefits while they're in school, and then have all their textbooks and uniforms and everything else paid for by a grant, is a huge opportunity for these LVNs.
That's so wonderful. I don't see any other questions, but I was wondering, Julie or Sherry or Lisa, if anything else has come to your mind from these questions of something that you might want to share, and if we can unmute Julie in case she wants to say something too.
Okay.
Julie,
hi, this is Julie. The one thing I would like to say too is that working with the partnerships that we had, that once the students graduated from our program, they had to make some changes too, because their requirements to become a nurse, they had to wait to apply for those jobs. And then the application was more for seasoned nurses, not for new hires. So they kind of had to change their processes too, but they didn't know that until that happened. So that was another reason.
That was the correctional system? Or
yeah, from the correctional system, yeah.
Right. And that actually, that's a good point, right? So it was, here you've got this LVN job, but now your program helped the correctional system to say, oh, wait a minute, we have another barrier that but it's something that we put up, right? It's a wall we put up. So the jobs weren't there. They had to then apply for the jobs, even though they were already thought they were on the path for the job. Right.
Right.
And so where are they in that process? The correctional system, as far as for future apprentices.
I think after the first round, they corrected it, or it made it where it was possible for them to apply and get those jobs. Yeah.
Exactly. That's our understanding, is they've fixed it, and now they understand what they need to do with these new graduates. And my understanding is they also created a onboarding or orientation process for them.
That's terrific. And I think that really speaks to other CHI grants. People are probably taking little notes right now. where you have incumbent employees as your apprentices, right, is thinking about what's then the next step.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Well, Caleb asked about expanding the program, and we know, though, that the program will be expanded through Sacramento City College and Riverside Community College District. For Delta, you all are on a no-cost extension at this point, correct?
I believe we received some funding through this December 19th.
Terrific.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To finish out the people that are in the program, ones that had,
But we sat down to the table to try to identify if it was something, there was a way to be able to continue it moving forward.
Yeah.
But that answer hasn't really been finalized.
Yeah. Well, it is something that I think, when you do talk about, I think it was Sahai that brought up communication, just thinking about more people that come into the room, whether it's just in the college or other partners, and brainstorming how can something be sustainable,
yeah.
right?
Exactly.
I think a lot of grants know that this is the kickoff piece, but I think we all know that if we're talking about we got a grant, that the sustainability piece is like, oh, I probably should have started on that yesterday, right? Because this is an awesome opportunity. But I really do think for the round one grantees, you guys really knocked down a lot of walls and had the state think about changing policies, right, and regs in order to make this more sustainable. And for you all that are on the line and in the webinar room, just so you know, I think you're really benefiting from the kinds of lessons learned by San Joaquin Delta College. And any last thoughts, Lisa? I see no other questions in the room.
No, I just think it's a great opportunity. I've always been passionate about LVNs being able to advance because it's their objective, and it's just a great opportunity for these students to have that, to work and to be in our program. It's very exciting, or other programs.
Thank you so much for those closing thoughts. That was very strong. And again, I want to thank Lisa Lucchesi, Julie Kay, Sherry Peterson, who are on the line from San Joaquin Delta College. And thanks to all of you who joined the webinar today. We're ending early, but again, I really appreciate everyone joining the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.